Hey guys, welcome to today's video. Today's video we're going to talk a little bit about wintertime fishing on a highland reservoir. And what a highland reservoir is a deep, clear water lake, in the mountains. So if you got a deep, clear, rocky lake in the mountains, that's what's called a highland reservoir. A highland reservoir generally has all three species of fish, or at least two. Uh, Mainly you have largemouth, smallmouth, and spotted bass in a highland reservoir. So here's some of the wintertime baits that we use. And what we're talking about wintertime here in West Virginia is starting around December. And that's when your water temperature gets right at 50 or a little bit below. And we go all the way down to about, we're catching fish in a 35, 36 degree water temperature. So here's some of the baits we like to fish. We start out, when you're starting out and you're still right around 50 degrees, we're catching a lot of fish on a crankbait. You know, uh, this here happens to be an all-time favorite of everybody's. This is a wigglewort. So if you got a lot of wind, that bait's going to do really, really well. And also, you go down to a shad wrap, a tight wobbling bait. So those are two crankbaits you like to fish, and that's going to go hold true to you're about 43 to 50 degree range. If we need to go a little bit deeper, you can go to, like, this is a spro, this is a rock crawler, which will dive deeper than the wigglewort will and the shad wrap. But we also throw some of the balsa style baits like this. It's got a real wide wobble action to it. We catch a lot of fish on it. But if we need to go really deep for these fish, which sometimes we do, you can see this bait here is beat up pretty good. This one, we catch a lot of fish on the Highland Reservoir. This is just a fat-free shad, and we also throw like the Strike King, 5XD, work pretty good. So those are baits that we like to fish when we're at that area there of the water temperature. Other baits that we like to fish in that type of water temperature, you can catch a lot of fish on a jig. I'm happening just to fish a little finesse jig with a small chunk on it and pitch it around the brushy timber. Anytime you got a lay down log or a lay down tree in there, it's got a little bit of brush around it, that seems to work real good too. Other baits that we like to fish, you get out there, an A-rig. An A-rig's always good when you're in that 42 to 50 degree range. Always can throw that. If you're out fishing right around the minnows, where you got schools of bait and everything, you know, just a jig head minnow. Everybody likes fishing a jig head minnow. For a suspended fish on your forward facing sonar, that's a bait that we really like to fish. So then we get a little bit colder, or in that mid 40 range, a lot of fish caught on a jerk bait. You can always catch. This happens to be a 110 style. This is a +1. We throw it a lot, and sometimes the fish will be pretty high up in the water column. We just go to a regular 110. This happens to be a bait that we like to throw real well, especially if you have a lot of perch in your lake. It seems to eat them. They seem to eat the perch real well, especially smallmouth do. So we like fishing that. Uh, Now, when the water gets really extremely cold, there's a couple baits that we really like to fish. If you're around the bait still, when you're in that 38 degree water temperature, 36 degree water temperature, the jig head minnow will still work. If the fish are schooled around the bait, you can still get that down there and catch some fish. Other baits to note is just a, blade bait. This here happens to be a homemade style blade bait that oh my goodness, we made these years ago. We've caught a lot of fish on them. Now they have some new kinds out, and we throw them too, catch a lot of fish on them. The other thing is a tail spinner, that you can kind of work off the bank, just pump it, let it fall, and you can also catch a fish around the bait with one of these. This here happens to be just a ½ ounce, tail spinner. This here is one of my favorites. This tail spinner here. We catch a lot of fish on that bait right there. You're just pulling it off the bank and working it down the bluffs. So those work really good, especially when we get down in that water temperature when we're below 40. It seems like the blade baits work really well. That Deminky rig or the jig head minnow, banging a minnow, shaking a minnow around the bait work really well when you're that cold. And one of my favorites, and a lot of guys don't think about it this anymore, is because a lot of guys are out there chasing those fish under the bait. We still catch a lot of fish on a floating ply. So those are some of the baits that I really love to fish this time of year, when we're in the cold water on a highland reservoir. It seems like the lowland reservoirs you don't catch as many fish as you do on the highland reservoirs. I've had days on a blade bait and a tail spinner, where we've caught, you know, well over 30, 40 keepers in a day's time. So that's what we're looking at when we're fishing, you know, Highland reservoirs in the wintertime. Uh, so hope these little tips help you out. And thank you all very much for watching. Please smash that like button for us, and please give a chance to, you know, hopefully you'll subscribe to the channel if you like this content. Thank you guys very much.